The morning of Maya's fourth week began with another cruel surprise. Someone had spray-painted offensive words across her locker overnight. The bright red letters impossible to ignore as students gathered around to stare and whisper. Maya stood frozen for a moment, feeling the weight of dozens of eyes on her back. The janitor approached with cleaning supplies. Shaking his head sadly as he began scrubbing away the hateful message, Principal Davidson arrived within minutes. Summoned by concerned teachers who had witnessed the gathering crowd, he examined the damage with a serious expression and assured Maya that security cameras would be reviewed immediately. However, Maya had little faith in the investigation process after 3 weeks of empty promises and delayed responses to previous incidents. During first period English class, Mrs. Rodriguez pulled Maya aside after the bell rang. The teacher's kind eyes reflected genuine concern as she asked about Maya's well-being and offered support. Maya appreciated the gesture but felt frustrated by the pattern of individual teachers expressing sympathy, while the administrative system failed to provide meaningful protection or consequences. Brittany entered the classroom late, as was becoming her habit, with a perfectly innocent expression that fooled most adults completely. She apologized sweetly to Mrs. Rodriguez and took her seat with theatrical remorse that Maya found sickening. The performance was flawless, designed to maintain Brittany's reputation as a model student while her harassment campaign continued behind the scenes. At lunch, Maya sat alone in the corner of the cafeteria, picking at her homemade sandwich while watching groups of students laugh and socialize around her. The isolation felt particularly sharp during meal times when social connections became most visible. She pulled out her phone to text her brother Marcus, who was away at college but always made time for her concerns. Marcus responded quickly with encouraging words and reminded Maya of their family's strength through adversity. He also asked pointed questions about whether she felt physically safe, indicating his growing concern about the escalating situation. Maya assured him she could handle whatever came her way, but privately wondered how much longer she could endure the constant psychological pressure. After lunch, Maya headed to the girls' bathroom on the second floor, needing a few minutes of quiet before her afternoon classes. As she washed her hands at the sink, she heard footsteps approaching and voices she recognized immediately. Brittany entered with her usual entourage of followers, their conversation stopping abruptly when they noticed Maya's presence. The tension in the small space became palpable as Brittany positioned herself between Maya and the door, while her friends flanked the exits. Maya recognized the tactical positioning immediately from her self-defense training, and felt her body automatically shifting into a more alert stance. Her grandmother's words about peaceful resolution echoed in her mind. Even as her training kicked in, Brittany began speaking in a deceptively casual tone, commenting on Maya's appearance and questioning why someone like her thought she belonged at Jefferson High. The words were carefully chosen to avoid obvious threats while still conveying menace and intimidation. Her followers giggled nervously, feeding off their leader's confidence and cruelty. Maya maintained eye contact with Brittany throughout the verbal assault, refusing to show fear or backing down despite being outnumbered 4-1. She responded calmly to each insult, using techniques she had learned in conflict de-escalation workshops. Her steady voice and controlled breathing seemed to frustrate Brittany, who was clearly expecting tears or angry outbursts. The confrontation escalated when Brittany stepped closer, invading Maya's personal space and making subtle physical contact disguised as accidents. She brushed against Maya's shoulder while reaching for paper towels, stepped on her foot while moving to the mirror, and generally used her body to intimidate without crossing obvious lines that could be reported as assault. Maya's training had taught her to recognize these pre-violence indicators and respond appropriately to protect herself. She began calculating distances and exit routes while maintaining her calm exterior. Brittany's friends seemed less confident as Maya failed to react with the fear they expected, but peer pressure kept them committed to supporting their leader's harassment. When Brittany made a disparaging comment about Maya's family and financial situation, something shifted in the atmosphere. Maya's jaw tightened slightly, the only visible sign of her growing anger. But her voice remained steady as she warned Brittany to keep her family out of their conflict. The quiet authority in Maya's tone seemed to surprise everyone present. Brittany interpreted Maya's restraint as weakness and decided to push further, making physical contact that couldn't be dismissed as accidental. She shoved Maya's shoulder hard enough to make her stumble backward, then claimed it was an accident while smirking at her friends. The aggressive action crossed a clear line from harassment into physical assault, changing the legal and moral dynamics of their conflict completely. Maya steadied herself against the sink and looked directly into Brittany's eyes, speaking in a voice that carried unmistakable warning. She told Brittany that she had tried to resolve their issues peacefully, reported incidents through proper channels, and given adults multiple opportunities to address the situation. But if Brittany wanted to make their conflict physical, Maya was more than prepared to defend herself. The confidence and competence in Maya's voice seemed to register with Brittany's followers, who began exchanging uncertain glances and stepping backward toward the door. They had signed up to support social bullying, not potential violence, and Maya's calm readiness suggested capabilities they hadn't anticipated. The power dynamics in the bathroom were shifting rapidly. Brittany felt her authority being challenged, and couldn't back down in front of her friends without losing face. She had built her reputation on intimidating others into submission, and Maya's refusal to be cowed threatened the foundation of her social power. Pride and desperation drove her to escalate further. Despite warning signs that should have made her reconsider, the situation reached a breaking point when Brittany grabbed Maya's backpack and dumped its contents across the dirty bathroom floor, scattering textbooks, homework, and personal items while her friends recorded the incident on their phones. The deliberate destruction of Maya's property while laughing and filming crossed multiple lines and eliminated any remaining possibility of peaceful resolution. Maya stood perfectly still for several seconds, watching her belongings scattered across the floor and processing the complete breakdown of civilized behavior. Her martial arts training had prepared her for exactly this type of scenario, where restraint was no longer appropriate and self-defense became necessary. The time for warnings and de-escalation had passed when Maya began moving. Her actions were deliberate and controlled rather than emotional or impulsive. She stepped over her scattered belongings and positioned herself at the optimal distance and angle for what was about to happen. Her breathing remained steady, her stance balanced, and her focus laser-sharp as years of training took over completely. Brittany misread Maya's calm preparation as resignation and moved forward to deliver what she expected would be the final humiliation of their encounter. She raised her hand to strike Maya across the face, confident that her victim would accept the blow passively and that the recorded evidence would cement her dominance for everyone to see. Maya's response was swift, precise, and devastating. She caught Brittany's wrist mid-swing, twisted it using a basic taekwondo technique, and used Brittany's own momentum to send her stumbling sideways into the wall. The entire movement took less than 2 seconds and required minimal force, but demonstrated complete control over the situation. The shocked silence that followed was broken only by Brittany's gasp of pain and surprise as she found herself pressed against the cold tile wall with her arm twisted behind her back in a submission hold. Maya maintained just enough pressure to control the situation without causing serious injury. Though Brittany's position made any resistance impossible and painful, Maya leaned close enough to speak directly into Brittany's ear, her voice calm but carrying unmistakable authority as she explained exactly what would happen next. She told Brittany that their conflict was over, that any future harassment would result in immediate consequences, and that the recorded evidence of Brittany's assault would be reported to both school authorities and police if necessary. The bathroom fell completely silent except for Brittany's rapid breathing as Maya released her hold and stepped backward, giving everyone space to process what had just happened. Brittany slumped against the wall, rubbing her wrist and staring at Maya with a mixture of shock, pain, and newfound respect that bordered on fear, Maya calmly began collecting her scattered belongings from the floor, her movements unhurried and confident as she restored order to the chaos Brittany had created. Her classmates watched in stunned silence, their phones forgotten in their hands as they struggled to understand how completely the power dynamic had shifted in just a few seconds. Word of the bathroom confrontation spread through Jefferson High School like wildfire, though the details became increasingly distorted with each retelling. Students whispered in hushed tones about how Maya had single-handedly faced down Brittany Mills and her entire crew, with some versions claiming she had defeated multiple attackers simultaneously. The reality was dramatic enough without embellishment, but high school rumors rarely concerned themselves with accuracy. Maya found herself walking through hallways filled with curious stares, but the energy felt completely different from the hostile attention she had endured for weeks. Students who had previously avoided her now nodded respectfully or offered shy smiles of acknowledgement. The invisible barriers that had isolated her began crumbling as word spread that she wasn't the easy target. Brittany had assumed. Brittany spent the rest of that day nursing her bruised wrist and wounded pride, telling anyone who would listen that Maya had attacked her unprovoked in the bathroom. However, her friends' recorded videos told a different story, showing clearly who had initiated physical contact and escalated the situation into violence. The evidence contradicted Brittany's victim narrative completely, forcing her to confront the consequences of her actions. Principal Davidson called Maya to his office the following morning, and she entered prepared for suspension or other disciplinary action despite being the victim of sustained harassment. She had gathered documentation of every incident, screenshot evidence of cyberbullying, and witness statements from students who had observed Brittany's campaign against her. Maya was determined to tell the complete truth regardless of consequences. To her surprise, Principal Davidson seemed genuinely interested in hearing her side of the story and reviewing all the evidence she had collected. The videos from Brittany's friends had been shared with administrators by concerned parents who recognized that their children had witnessed and recorded criminal behavior. The visual evidence made denial impossible and forced the school to acknowledge their failure to protect Maya adequately. Maya explained her attempts to resolve the situation peacefully, her reports to teachers and counselors that had been dismissed or minimized, and her decision to defend herself only after being physically assaulted. She detailed the weeks of harassment, the escalating threats, and the complete breakdown of the school's responsibility to provide a safe learning environment for all students. Principal Davidson listened carefully and took extensive notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions about specific incidents and timeline details. Maya could see genuine remorse in his expressions as he realized how badly the school had failed one of their students. The documentation she provided painted a clear picture of systematic bullying that had been allowed to escalate unchecked for weeks. The investigation that followed was swift and thorough, involving interviews with multiple witnesses, review of security footage, and examination of social media evidence. Brittany's pattern of behavior became undeniable when other students came forward with their own stories of harassment and intimidation. Maya's case had opened floodgates of complaints that had been suppressed by fear and social pressure. Brittany faced serious consequences for her actions, including suspension, mandatory counseling, and legal charges filed by Maya's family with support from the school district. Her reign of terror at Jefferson High came to an abrupt end as administrators implemented new policies and procedures designed to prevent similar situations in the future. The girl who had seemed untouchable discovered that actions have consequences regardless of social status. Maya's mother was both proud and concerned when she learned about the confrontation, appreciating her daughter's restraint and self-defense skills while worrying about the violence Maya had been forced to endure. She scheduled meetings with school officials to ensure proper protection and support systems were in place. Refusing to let her daughter face these challenges alone anymore, the martial arts community at Maya's old dojo was extremely proud when Master Chun learned about the situation, particularly Maya's attempts to resolve the conflict peacefully before defending herself appropriately. He used her experience as a teaching example for younger students about the importance of discipline, restraint, and knowing when self-defense becomes necessary for personal safety. Maya's brother, Marcus, drove down from college that weekend to check on his sister personally, bringing with him a mixture of pride in her strength and anger at what she had been forced to endure. He spent hours talking with Maya about the importance of standing up for herself, while also processing the emotional impact of sustained harassment and social isolation. At school, Maya found herself surrounded by students who wanted to hear her story directly rather than relying on secondhand rumors and speculation. Many shared their own experiences with Brittany's bullying, expressing gratitude that someone had finally stood up to her effectively. Maya became an unexpected symbol of resistance against injustice at Jefferson High. The social dynamics at school shifted dramatically as Brittany's former victims felt empowered to speak out about their experiences and seek support from adults who were finally listening. A wave of accountability swept through the student body as others who had participated in harassment campaigns faced consequences for their actions. The culture of silent complicity began changing into one of active resistance to bullying. Maya's academic performance improved significantly once she no longer had to navigate constant harassment and psychological warfare. Teachers noticed her increased participation in class discussions and her willingness to collaborate with other students on group projects. The intellectual potential that had been suppressed by trauma finally had space to flourish in a safer environment. New friendships formed as students who had been afraid to associate with Maya during Brittany's campaign now felt safe to approach her openly. She discovered that many of her classmates had wanted to befriend her from the beginning but had been intimidated by potential social consequences. Maya learned valuable lessons about courage, both in defending herself and in reaching out to others. The incident sparked broader conversations about racism, bullying, and school safety that extended beyond Jefferson High into the wider community. Parents demanded better training for teachers and administrators in recognizing and addressing harassment, particularly when it targeted students from marginalized backgrounds. Maya's experience became a catalyst for positive change that benefited future students. Maya's confidence grew as she realized that standing up for herself had not only ended her immediate suffering but had also created opportunities for others to find their voices. She began mentoring younger students who faced similar challenges, sharing strategies for documentation, reporting, and self-advocacy that could help them navigate difficult situations more effectively. Brittany's attempts to rebuild her reputation and social status at Jefferson High largely failed as students and teachers remained wary of her manipulative behaviors. She was forced to confront the real consequences of her actions and begin the difficult process of genuine accountability and change. Some students offered forgiveness and second chances, while others maintained appropriate boundaries for their own protection. The administration implemented new policies requiring immediate investigation of harassment reports, mandatory training for all staff on recognizing and addressing bullying, and clear consequences for students who engaged in intimidation or discrimination. Maya's experience had exposed serious gaps in their procedures that needed urgent attention and comprehensive reform. By the end of her first semester at Jefferson High School, Maya had transformed from an isolated target of harassment into a respected student leader and advocate for justice. Her academic achievements earned recognition from teachers and administrators, while her courage in standing up to bullying inspired other students to find their own strength and voice. Maya's story spread beyond their school district as local news outlets covered the incident and its aftermath, highlighting both the persistent problem of bullying in schools and the importance of empowering students to defend themselves when institutions fail to protect them. Her experience became part of larger conversations about educational reform and student safety. Looking back on those challenging weeks, Maya realized that the confrontation with Brittany had been a turning point, not just in her high school experience but in her understanding of her own strength and capabilities. The martial arts training that had prepared her physically had also developed mental discipline and emotional resilience that served her well beyond self-defense situations. The relationships Maya built at Jefferson High became lasting friendships based on mutual respect and shared values rather than social convenience or fear. Students who had witnessed her courage and integrity sought her friendship genuinely, creating a supportive community that enriched her remaining years at the school. Significantly, Maya graduated from Jefferson High School as valedictorian 3 years later, delivering a commencement speech about courage, justice, and the importance of standing up for what is right even when it feels impossible. Her transformation from bullied outsider to celebrated student leader inspired classmates and teachers alike, proving that adversity could beco. Maya Thompson walked through the crowded hallway of Jefferson High School with her head held high, but her stomach twisted with familiar dread. The 17-year-old had transferred to this predominantly white suburban school just 3 weeks ago when her mother got a new job across town. Everything here felt different from her old school in the city. The lockers gleamed with fresh paint, the floors sparkled under bright fluorescent lights, and expensive cars filled the student parking lot. She clutched her worn backpack tighter as whispers followed her down the corridor. Some students stared openly while others turned away quickly when she made eye contact. Maya had dealt with being one of the few black students before, but this school felt particularly unwelcoming. The guidance counselor had promised her that Jefferson High prided itself on diversity and inclusion, but those words felt hollow now. As Maya approached her locker, she noticed a group of popular students gathered nearby. At the center stood Brittany Mills, a blonde junior who seemed to rule the school with an iron fist wrapped in designer clothes. Brittany's father owned several car dealerships in town, and she never let anyone forget her family status. Her perfectly straightened hair cascaded over her shoulders, and her manicured nails tapped impatiently against her phone case as she scrolled through social media. Maya had heard stories about Brittany during her first week. Teachers praised her academic achievements and community service, but students whispered different tales. They spoke of cruel pranks, social media harassment, and a mean streak that could destroy reputations overnight. Brittany had a talent for making her bullying look accidental or justified, always maintaining plausible deniability when adults were around. The trouble started small, as it always did. Maya found her locker combination mysteriously changed on her second day. When she went to the office for help, the secretary seemed annoyed and suggested Maya had simply forgotten the numbers. The next day, someone had stuck gum in her locker's ventilation slots. Small inconveniences that could easily be dismissed as bad luck or clumsiness, but Maya knew better. She had caught glimpses of Brittany's satisfied smirk whenever something went wrong. During lunch, she noticed how conversations stopped when she approached tables in the cafeteria. Students who had seemed friendly in class suddenly became distant and awkward in social settings. The invisible walls were closing in, and Maya recognized the calculated nature of social isolation. What Brittany and her followers didn't know was that Maya had been dealing with bullies her entire life. Growing up in a rough neighborhood had taught her to read situations quickly and defend herself when necessary. Her older brother Marcus had enrolled her in martial arts classes when she was 8 years old after a particularly bad incident at her elementary school. She had been practicing taekwondo and boxing for nearly a decade, earning her black belt 2 years ago. Maya's grandmother had always told her that true strength came from restraint, not violence. She believed in trying to resolve conflicts peacefully first, even when her instincts told her to fight back immediately. This philosophy had served her well in the past, helping her navigate difficult situations without escalating them unnecessarily. But she also knew that sometimes peaceful resolution wasn't possible, and bullies only understood one language. The harassment escalated during Maya's third week at Jefferson High. Someone had written racial slurs on her textbooks while she was in gym class. Her backpack mysteriously fell apart during lunch, spilling her belongings across the cafeteria floor while students laughed and recorded videos on their phones. Teachers seemed conveniently absent whenever these incidents occurred, and when Maya reported them, she was told there wasn't enough evidence to take action. Brittany's campaign against Maya became more sophisticated as days passed. She created fake social media accounts to spread rumors about Maya's family and background. Photos of Maya were edited and shared in group chats with cruel captions. The psychological warfare was designed to break Maya's spirit gradually, making her feel isolated and powerless in her new environment. During chemistry class, Maya sat alone at her lab table while other students worked in pairs. Mr. Peterson had assigned partners randomly, but somehow Maya's designated partner always found excuses to work with someone else. She completed her experiments independently, documenting her results carefully and trying to ignore the whispered jokes coming from nearby tables. Brittany sat 3 tables away with her best friend Jessica, occasionally glancing over with calculated coldness. She had perfected the art of intimidation through subtle gestures and meaningful looks. Her influence over other students was remarkable, turning potential allies against Maya through a combination of social pressure and implied threats. After school, Maya waited at the bus stop alone while other students climbed into expensive cars or walked to the nearby parking lot. The October air carried a chill that made her pull her jacket tighter. She thought about calling her mother to pick her up, but knew she was working a double shift at the hospital. Financial struggles had forced their family to make this move, and Maya didn't want to add to her mother's burdens. The yellow school bus arrived 15 minutes late, as usual. Maya climbed aboard and found an empty seat near the front, preferring to sit close to the driver, who seemed kind but overwhelmed by his responsibilities. The ride home took 45 minutes, through winding suburban streets that all looked the same to her city-trained eyes. That evening, Maya sat at her small desk in their apartment, trying to focus on homework while her younger sister Zoe watched cartoons on their second-hand tablet. Their mother worked late shifts as a nurse, leaving Maya responsible for cooking dinner and helping with Zoe's schoolwork. The weight of responsibility felt heavier since starting at Jefferson High, where academic standards were higher and social pressures more intense. Maya pulled out her phone and scrolled through social media, immediately regretting the decision. Screenshots of edited photos and cruel comments about her appearance filled her feed. Someone had created a fake profile using her name and posted embarrassing content designed to damage her reputation. The digital assault felt just as painful as physical violence, maybe worse because of its persistence and public nature. She considered telling her mother about the bullying but hesitated. Her mom had sacrificed so much to give them opportunities in this better school district. Maya didn't want to admit that the move might have been a mistake or that she couldn't handle the situation independently. Pride and protectiveness warred with her growing frustration and anger. Late that night, Maya lay in bed listening to sirens wail in the distance and thinking about her old school. The building had been older and the resources limited, but she had felt accepted there. Students came from similar backgrounds and understood struggles she didn't have to explain. Here, she felt like an outsider looking through a window at a world she couldn't fully enter. Her phone buzzed with another notification from the fake social media account. This time, someone had posted her address and bus route information with threatening messages. The online harassment was bleeding into the real world, and Maya realized the situation was becoming dangerous. She screenshot the posts as evidence. Though she doubted school administrators would take meaningful action, Maya thought about her martial arts training and the discipline her instructors had taught her. Master Chan always emphasized that fighting should be the last resort, but he also taught that everyone had the right to defend themselves against genuine threats. The line between standing up for yourself and unnecessary violence could be thin, but Maya was beginning to feel that line being crossed. Tomorrow would mark her 4th week at Jefferson High School. Maya made a silent promise to herself that she would try one more time to resolve things peacefully. She would document everything, report it properly through official channels, and give the adults one final chance to address the situation appropriately. But if they failed to act, if Brittany escalated her campaign further, Maya would be ready to protect herself using every skill she had learned over the past 9 years of training.